much, Dr. Josef Korbel. He's a major leader in the world of Chinese studies and trying to reduce misperceptions and build trust between the U.S. and China. So I quote a lot of times what Professor Zhao writes. I'm not holding this right. I'm an unsophisticated speaker. I need practice, actually. Okay, so I thought I would do several things today. I brought you some slides. I pulled out of other readings to try to illustrate Chinese grand strategy. Number one. Number two, I want to know how many of you have read your dean's, Christopher Hill, how many of you have read his memoir, Outpost?
Reading it.
Let's see by a show of hands. Actually read it.
Reading it right now. Reading it right now.
Okay, so one of my goals today, I want to try to persuade as many of you as I can to go on Amazon and buy his memoir. And you can see the bounce, you know, and one day, if the popularity of the book goes up, it means a lot of people will buy it. So about 50 of you would buy Chris Hill's memoir called Outpost. It will jump by tonight. That's purpose number two. Purpose number three is the most selfish. I want you to buy my new book, which comes out on Monday. It's available for what they call pre-order. You go to Amazon, you type in the 100-year marathon. Buy me in Malasson. You type in the 100-year marathon, and you'll see this book. You can order it. If there's a bump tonight by midnight, that means I've persuaded, I don't know, 10 of you, which is a big deal. And getting 10 new copies would be good. Fourth is what Professor Zhao said. I'll tell you a little bit about the Pentagon and Hawks. Because I was told that there are mainly young people coming today who might like some career advice. How do you, what they call, get in the room? If you read Chris Hill's memoir, there are at least 20 wonderful stories in there where, without being a professor of international relations theory, he explains how policy works, not only with Americans, but he shows you how policy is made in several foreign countries. This is very precious knowledge. It's good to read the book. But how do you get in the room? How do you become Ambassador Chris Hill or Assistant Secretary Chris Hill? Or in my case, Assistant Undersecretary for Policy Planning in the Pentagon, or an advisor to the Secretary of Defense. How do you do that? The book tells the path he took. He's a Peace Corps volunteer in Cameroon. He can't even get to the Foreign Service exam. He has to drive 8 hours. So drive, in the sense of motivation, becomes very important. You have to want to get into the government. If you don't do that, you're never going to be in the room. You'll be a professor or a journalist or a business person or a Department of Government chairman at the Air Force Academy. That's all good. Don't get me wrong. But you won't be in the room. Chris Hill's book also suggests why being in the room is extremely frustrating. That's why my first slide is the most powerful woman in China. That would be on the left. In politics, as Ambassador Hill shows in his book, you have to be sensitive to the range of views and who has how much power, whether it's the foreign team you're dealing with or your own team. If you lack sensitivity to politics and who thinks what, you're not going to make it into the room. Sometimes you hear on TV something like President Obama is playing to his base. He did something that his base likes, as though that's somehow bad. No, that's good. That means he wants to stay in power. In China, the same kind of politics exists. Everybody has to know the political spectrum, who has power, and who should I play to stay in power or to increase my power. That kind of information is very rare. It's not in newspapers. Your skill in getting that kind of information determines whether you'll be president, that would be the lady on the right, or not. So, I'm describing today for you the spectrum in China of people who have power and how you have to maneuver. The lady on the left, if she wants to become what she already is, the most powerful woman in China. She's a vice premier, she's on the Politburo, her name is Liu Yingdu. I met her back in 1999. Got a wonderful photo of her. Both of us look a lot younger 16 years ago. Already you could see this is a future success. She was heading an organization that we don't have in Washington, D.C. I never heard of it. But I say she was the head of the United Front Work Department to an American senior official. Nobody knows what that is. But in China, it's a very big deal. If you imagine the complex in Beijing of the government and the party, the Zhunan High complex, right next door, out the door, big building. It has chapters overseas. Yes. It's a very big deal. And it gives you a big clue as an American, how do Chinese think about grand strategy? One of the most important parts about grand strategy comes from a very famous essay everybody has to read if you want to be in the Communist Party in China. That's about 85 million people, so it's not too elite. The essay is by Chairman Mao, and it says it's about the Chinese Revolution. And the sentence is, 谁是朋友,谁是敌人. Most important thing about strategy, Mao says, who's our friend and who's our enemy? That means you can't be a Pollyanna and just go around, oh, everybody, I like everybody, everybody's my friend. No, you will not get in the room. So, the role of the hawks in China has to do with what's happened to them in the past. I don't know how I move these slides. Just do what? Get intro. You have to know what intro is. A hawk in China, I'd like to teach you some Chinese words today, at least 2 Chinese words that you could all show off with others who don't know any Chinese. The first one is what this is. Now, we might think this is either an eagle or a hawk. We have to decide if it's eagle or a hawk. In Chinese, the same word covers both. It's called a ying. A ying is both an eagle and a hawk. You have to also know a second word. Pai, faction, point of view, school. So the hawks in China are called the Ying Pai. And they're very prestigious. They're proud of their views. And part of my duties have been to understand them better. Because in the military exchange relationship with China, it's been going on more than 30 years, a lot of Ying Pai come on exchange programs. So we get to meet them. And they're night and day different from foreign ministry or scholars. They think differently, and they're happy to tell you what they think. They have, in some ways, an alternative universe of history of China, history of the world, and what to do next. But some Americans say, oh, these people are crazy. They're irresponsible. We shouldn't pay any attention to them. They're bad. That's a good point of view. But going back to my first point about who gets in the room and who succeeds in negotiations, you've got to know the full spectrum. So if we say they're stupid and irresponsible and crazy, what are our chances for understanding how a political decision is made in China? I would argue our chances go way down. We don't have to worship them. We don't have to say they're the best. But we have to understand their point of view. So why not give them books, journal articles, meet with them? If one turns up in an exchange program and comes in the Pentagon, why not give him an extra large hamburger? So, I got a holiday card one year, addressed to me, a hawk on the cover. Inside it said, from a hawk to a hawk. I was flattered. When you start understanding Chinese debates, you have to keep in mind one thing. China's not the only culture that does this. Dissent is often done in Chinese paintings, poetry, opera. Dissent and deception is sometimes mixed together to the point that a professor of Chinese literature at a place called Harvard University named Stephen Owen has written an article about how do Chinese novels and Chinese fiction differ from American novels or Western novels and things like that. He says Chinese novels are distinguished by the focus on deceptions. All the characters in the novel are deceiving each other. They have deceptive names, and part of the duty of the reader is to unravel the deception. It's a little bit like a crossword puzzle isn't really a deception. A crossword puzzle is, do you know which to go there? So, in our field, Professor Zhao and me, we're not really taught much about Chinese ancient literature and poetry and drama. This is all for people who study, ancient China. But it turns out one key to understanding the Hawks of China is to see how they write in a kind of allegorical way, not directly attacking the moderates, but indirectly describing things, often using ancient historical episodes. And one of their favorites, they sometimes do this with paintings. This is a wonderful article about decoding messages in Chinese paintings by knowing the symbols. There's another article about the use of dissent when the Mongols occupied China for 100 years, how you had to write memos in a certain way to be sure, A, you weren't executed, but B, you could make your point about resistance to the Mongols. So among the scholars of literature, painting, poetry, in this case philosophy, this is all well understood. But people who study China today, like myself and others, we are not taught this. In graduate school, we're taught all Chinese, all the time, tell the truth, at least as much as Americans do. Now that's a very interesting premise, because it's totally different. Learning if you're in literature class, philosophy class, poetry class, or painting class down the hall. My favorite China expert in the whole world, not Professor Zhao. It is a Frenchman. Susan and I have been to see him in Paris. He's written 12 books about China. The Chinese like his books, they translate them. The Americans like his books. 6 of his books have been translated into English. He's only known in these philosophical literary circles. His books are brilliant. This is one of them. It's the key, without footnoting this gentleman, Henry Kissinger makes the content of this book the key to Henry Kissinger's new book on China. A concept called shir. That's my second word for you today. First one was ying pai. Can we all please say ying or ying pai? Ying pai, the Chinese army. Okay, second word of the day, shir. Or just like shir. The Air Force Academy, shir is a beautiful campus. Shir cannot be translated into English. He uses the word propensity of things. Some people say disposition, some people say influence. Shir appears in many Chinese compound characters. Tai shir, Xing shir. It means the situation, which can change from day to day, from moment to moment, according to what? According to the balance of power, according to opportunities. And the great responsibility of a statesman, a sage, is to detect the movement of shir before the other strategic team detects it. This is in 2 of his books, Propensity of Things, and a treatise on efficacy. Efficacy meaning to be effective, to use power. How do you use power in Chinese philosophy? American philosophy, generally speaking, do it yourself. The rugged individualist. Chinese philosophy, very different. There's only one similar American story to what the Chinese are saying about grand strategy and power. Do you all know the story of Tom Sawyer and painting the fence? Sure. You get somebody else to do your work for you. It's very rare in the American world. He's considered somewhat crafty and deceptive. You trick his friends into painting the fence. It's a funny story. In the case of Chinese philosophy, to use shir, you get the other guy to do it for you. It's often called wu wei. Wu wei archer. You don't have to learn that. You have to learn shir. But wu wei larger. Wu means nothing. Wei means to do something. Are, therefore, zhi, rule or control, or get your way. Now, how come those four characters are up on the Forbidden City above the throne, in the throne rooms? How can you do nothing and get your way? Because you get the other people to do it for you. You don't do it yourself. The Chinese grand strategy, besides being alert to the movement of shi for the other team, you're thinking to yourself, how do I get the other guy to do my work, make me more powerful for me? And that becomes a major theme in the writings of the Chinese hawks. So, don't buy Francois Julien's books. Just buy Chris Hill's book, my book. I'm just reporting him as my favorite China expert. Now, how do we know all this? Did I one day walk into a bookstore to read a book by Professor Zhao? How do we learn about the hawks, their interest in ancient statecraft, their interest in a period called the Chunqiu Zhanguo, Spring and Autumn Warring States? It's a 500-year period. What happens in the 500 years? The first 250 years, 5 hegemons rise up, and then they fall. What do the Chinese call America? A hegemon. Are there lessons from the rise and fall of these 5 hegemons, according to the Chinese hawks in their books? Absolutely. A hegemon can rise, or a rising power, this is a key term, a rising power can be snuffed out by the crafty old hegemon who detects the shi of the rising power, decides to use his own force against him, and prevents a challenge to his power. You know any hegemons who might try to snuff out or contain a rising power today in 2015? Generally speaking, the answer would be no. We're busy with ISIS and climate change. We have 1,000 things to worry about. Haven't heard this business about hegemons and snuffing out rising powers. Well, guess what would happen if you were a room full of Chinese military or civilian hawks? Everybody immediately knows the reference. They can list the 5 different hegemons' strategies, how they rose and how they were brought down. And that's just the first half of the Warring States Spring-Autumn period. The second half is even more complicated. How do you build a coalition to take out the other powers so you can be number 1? It's called the Suqin Zhangyi school of thought. China's hawks loved this. And very slowly, we began to catch on. When they were writing all these ancient things, they would slip out something like, just like America today, or just like Japan. The guy who discovered all this is now deceased, unfortunately, very, very famous New York Times reporter named Harrison Salisbury, 1992. Very specific moment. He's doing his second book on China. He's interviewed Mao's former assistant, who also wrote a book on Mao. And they're getting around to the Long March, and what did Mao take with him on the Long March? Well, only one book. Well, that's fine. What's the book? You know, Zhezhi Tongjian. This book. Does anybody else? Harrison Salisbury wrote this in his book. He asked around. Anybody else read this book? Everybody reads this book. How about Deng Xiaoping when he was in detention in Jiangxi? Yes, he has Zhezhi Tongjian with him. What's in here? The rise and fall of hegemons, the warring states, the rise and fall of the most famous long-lasting emperors. How does an emperor rise up? From a rebel leader, let's say, to take over China. It's all in here. And there's various versions of this book. China's hawks love it. In case people miss the message of the rise and fall of hegemons, the rise and fall of emperors, now in China, you can go to movies. It's in all the movies. You can turn on TV soap operas. It's on TV. Or you can go to an old-fashioned Beijing opera. The plots of many of these operas are rise and fall of hegemons, rise and fall of emperors, use of deception, who's gullible and gets killed or loses his country, who uses deception, and Wu Wei gets others to pay expense, as you might put it. camels to learn all this. But China's